All right, guys and girls. Nick's voice just got way more. What's that word that the guy used? Apri. I don't know. I forget on the well. It's not Nick this time. Nick's on vacation, enjoying some time off. I think he gave his entire company some time off. So it's John, myself, and Garrett. What's Garrett's last name? For some reason, I'm blanking on it right now. Davis.
Is Davis.
Life
of Bub.
Yeah, his Instagram's the Life of Bub. He is a contractor up in Maine, but we have him on the podcast today. It was a good conversation. Nothing crazy. He did a good job. We were talking about how it could be awkward to hop on a podcast and a little nerve-wracking. But he did a good job. He talked about how he just recently built his own house, how he ended up getting a new custom build from that, kind of what he does with his business, where he's come from. And it's just a pretty down-to-earth conversation. So it was a good one. Yeah. Make sure you check it out. Again, like we always say, leave us a review, hop online. Don't give us any negative reviews or we're going to send John to come after you and the rest of his hockey buddies.
That's going to scare him.
Yeah. So this podcast is brought to you, as always, by Duration Moulding and Millwork. Ever needed that long length trim board that's 11 1/4 wide to avoid a seam or some sort of stepped detail? I feel like this is written directly towards me because I used Boral to make an extension jam once that was like 3 feet deep on this old house. And he's like, yo, we could make that out of one piece. It's like, yeah, I guess I could have. I stepped it like 3 different times from 5/4 down to 3, 4/4 to 3/4. But that was good to know now that I do know that. Good news. Duration now offers a trim board that measured just under an inch, 15/16 of an inch to be exact, in a full 18-inch width by 16-foot length. Super stable and able to be painted any color. Duration's new extra wide trim board is a great solution for deep fascias and rakes, even sign material. To learn more about Polyash products, visit their website at durationmillwork.com and be sure to follow them on Instagram or IG. That's a big trim board.
It's huge. It definitely comes in handy because
11 1/4 wide by 18 inches.
18. Yeah.
15/16. So it's basically 5/4 material that's 18 inches wide, 16-foot long. That's a big piece of trim. Good to know.
I got it on my house, man. And I was actually, since I was painting this weekend, I was like, did that V-groove open up? It's been 3 years.
Good.
I mitered it. Dynamite.
Yeah, it's nice. I like that. Cool. Well, enjoy the podcast, everyone. Thank you. How's not smoking?
Oh, man. Do you guys care if I chomp on a toothpick while we do this?
As long as we don't hear it. It's not bad for us, but people driving will go crazy.
It's day 4 right now.
Nice.
Yeah, it's I'm just ready, man. I've been smoking since I was 17. It's time to give it up. And it's not even the money, it's just the health benefits, It's just so horrible for you.
Yeah,
but it's got to be the money too, though. It's like $14. I sit there in line when I buy my orange juice, and there's people that buy scratch tickets, and I'm amazed by them. They're like, it's like watching a wild animal, the way that they when you see like a raccoon going after a trash barrel, it's amazing. That's how I feel about watching people pick scratch tickets.
Yeah.
Like they're just like in their element, but the same as like people buying smokes. I'm like, I sit there and add up the money, and they're there every day. I'm like, dude, that's like a car payment.
Yeah, it's like $5,000 a year I spend on cigarettes.
That's a car. It's like a decent car.
Yeah, man. It's like $400 to $500 a month. I smoke a pack. I smoke a pack and a half a day. So it's just like, 3 to 4 cigarettes every hour.
So what are you doing with it? You doing the patch? What are you?
I have the patch on. Yeah, I'm doing step 1 right now. I'm going to do that.
You got like 14 patches on under your arm.
How do you keep the patch? How do you keep the patch lit?
I almost started explaining that.
Dude, you know what though? That stuff gives you fucked up dreams.
So my dreams have been totally messed up, man. Like,
yeah, it's weird.
But then it's like they seem like so real when it's happening, but then I forget them as soon as I wake up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's time, man. It's time. It's hard though. You know, it's like I was home with my wife all weekend. We were doing stuff around the house. It was super easy. And then I went to work today and I got in my truck and it was like all that physical habitual shit that, you know, getting on site, lighting a butt, talking to the guys, lighting a butt, you know, it's just like, I just got to do it though. I got to stop having excuses and just do it. Just like my sobriety, dude. That's what I'm treating it as. You know, I'm an addict and I'm just going to treat this like booze and drugs and not do it again.
Yeah. The good thing is I feel like it would be harder to quit if you weren't sober just because self-control.
Oh, for sure, dude.
So like you definitely have a little bit of an advantage there that you already sorted that out.
Wow. Yeah, I completely
working
agree.
on sorting that out.
Yep, one day at a time, dude. Yep. So yeah.
All right, so we have to get your permission to record this. That we're gonna release it as a podcast.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so you, John,
already recording.
Oh, you're already recording?
Oh yeah.
I didn't realize. Sorry, finishing writing my check. So you, there's only really one way to go from the last podcast, so it shouldn't be that difficult.
I haven't listened to it, but I've seen some really funny story posts from John today.
Yeah, so you shouldn't really have to do much, and it'll be better than that one. So hopefully that takes a little bit of anxiety off of you.
Yeah, I was a little nervous, man. I was like, holy crap, you know. But
it's funny because you forget about that at this point. I mean, we don't really prepare anything,
right?
But you forget that it's awkward to be on the spot, and it's awkward to have something scheduled that you typically don't do. And it's not that you can't handle the conversation. It's just something different. It's weird, but I think that most guests end up getting nervous. But we don't really take that into account or cut them any slack for it. Yeah, that's not what happened last podcast. But I do forget that people get on here and are nervous.
What happened last podcast?
It was just bad. You're gonna have to listen to it. It didn't. I still don't know what happened or what's happening. Just very confusing. There was a lot of different directions, and it was all over the place, and it seemed like a trap.
And the worst part about it is, like, when we have people on, we do a little bit of vetting. We don't do a ton of it, but we, like, you know, blah blah, go back between us and check it out. So we have mutual respect for whoever's coming on.
Right.
You know, we're carving out time. Like you and I spoke months ago. We schedule it, put it on the schedule, and then we do it. So it's not like we just, back in the day, like Tyler, we used to just, hey, who we got today? Who do you want to call? And it was the day of stuff. Right. So it's like you want to go into it with a mutual respect. And the hardest thing was that we were really looking forward to learning some things, because the success that's projected online is something I thought I'd have a takeaway from, which means there'd be multiple takeaways for other people or vice versa. And it was just every road we went down, we somehow hit a stumbling block by accident. And it was really
that or a brick wall.
Yeah, that's true. So and it was just tough. And I think a lot of people probably had higher expectations, and it just fell flat. And usually we've done it where we haven't posted them in the past. We've only not done 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
We're filter them out some, but we've come to the realization that people understand what they're getting into, what you're signing up for. If you're going to get on a podcast, I mean, if you have a company, let alone you're going to get on a podcast, if you start a company, you should have an idea what your company's about and what you're doing, let alone just hopping on a podcast. So it was interesting, to say the least.
It sounds interesting.
Yeah, it was a fun one.
I mean, shit, that was my worst nightmare.
Yeah,
like you get this even today. We'll get this not insecurity, but it's like this, what the hell is that thing called? Where you're like impersonating somebody. It's like, I just feel like some days like, why am I on here?
Yeah.
I'm dealing with shit. Like I'm dealing with certain things that suck, that, online it makes it look like I'm smooth and, dialed in. And then you go
Right.
home and it's like, bro, the reality of different clients, different projects, different scenarios, then like you never have this thing dialed in. I think there's a text you can tell you're not on it between Brad, myself, and Nick. And yesterday we were talking about how we want to have Brad up for a podcast, and we're like, let's do the live one at JLC with Brad. And like the one question we want to ask is like, year 3 through 5, how much does it suck? Like the three of us were like, I want to quit. And then Nick said the same thing, and Brad's like, yeah, I wanted to quit back then. Now I'm at year 7 and I'm over that hump and I'm good. But it's like we all want to show success, because it's this weird thing is that you know that there's clients looking at your page. There's other builders and stuff like that that look up to you looking at your page. So you never want to really put out the stigma of a struggle, because I feel like you only bring more struggle to you.
Right.
So it's a really tough balance, to be honest, on this.
It is.
And that's why the podcast is great, because we can dig into deeper thoughts.
Right.
Situations.
Right.
How long have you been in business?
This is my 6th year.
6 and 7.
Yeah, year 3 through 5 definitely sucked.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, granted, the first 2 years I was in business, I was a complete mess because of my addiction. So, not knowing self-worth and just being a complete party animal. I didn't care. I was always robbing Peter to pay Paul. That was my first 2 years in business. Give me a deposit so I can pay for that job to pay for this job. It was a never-ending battle of me chasing my tail. It sucked really bad. So, I mean, once I got sober, it was kind of a different story. I was really scared to go back into business once I took like 3 months off of work, and, it just kind of all came together. But I feel like just since COVID, actually, my business has gone in a whole nother level that I just never imagined. And it just keeps going, and it's friggin' awesome.
So for everyone who doesn't know who you are, you're explain a little bit of what you do and where you are, and then maybe we'll dig into a tiny bit of how you got involved with what you're doing.
Yep. So my company is GW Woodworks. I'm out of Maine. I live in Sydney, Maine, and we do a lot of renovations, some new construction, pretty much new construction. But prior to this custom house that I just landed was, additions and stuff like that. But we do a lot of deck builds, bathroom renovations, kitchen remodels, finished basements. And I just landed a really big custom home that I'm super excited about, that we broke ground on a couple of months ago. And so, yeah, pretty much a little bit of everything. I don't really have a niche. I kind of like it all, and I do it all, except for, anything not carpentry I don't do, like sheetrock and all that. I have subs for that.
Yeah. So did you end up getting into the trades right out of high school?
I did, yeah. Yeah, and I dabbled in it a little bit before high school too. My uncle was a builder. My uncle was pretty wealthy, had a lot of money, had a lot of land, and built a lot of houses. So I was kind of around it at a young age. I kind of looked up to my uncle. And out of high school, my dad actually, who's not super blue collar, not a builder, but he was into real estate his whole life. So he started buying some houses and trying to flip them. And that's actually where I started. I was learning from my dad, who knew nothing. And then I realized I really liked carpentry. So I went to work for my uncle, and he kind of got me into it and started in the construction field.
And then as far as your carpentry background and you doing everything from, framing to finish, was there somebody that you kind of learned under for that, or is that stuff you just picked up on your own? Because I think that's one of the toughest things about handling multiple aspects of the construction industry. It's not only being able to do, various trades, but be able to do them well.
I completely agree. I mean, my uncle taught me a lot. But I would say, framing, I did quite a bit of it, but I got more into the finish work side of things. Once the houses were up, he started teaching me how to trim out a window. I got good at that. Okay, trim out all the windows, do some baseboard. Okay, then by the end of it, I was, trimming out the whole entire house and doing all the finish work. I really excelled in that. I like it. I like the details. I'm definitely not the best, but I think I do some pretty kick-ass work. And, that's kind of why I like renovations, because they involve a lot of that, including decks. I mean, there's a lot of details in decks. And yeah, that's kind of, I love framing too, though. And I have a lot to learn. I just built my own house and I framed it, and I was rusty, but luckily I had a good friend of mine who's a framer, and he kind of brought it back to me and showed me some new tricks and helped me get through it. And it was a pretty awesome experience.
That's fun. Go ahead.
I fell in love with framing when I was younger, because I feel like I could look past the hard work, but I'm not going to use the word addicted because this is the wrong podcast for it, but I absolutely loved the satisfaction of how this, like, the walk away every day. I remember I used to have like a disposable camera. I'd take a photo from the same spot. And it was like, it was something just so consuming about, like, I did all that. Like, the only way that happens is, even though I was the guy like lumping sheets of plywood, it's still, without my piece of this pie, that wouldn't have happened. And I was consumed, that's the word I'll use, with that part of it, where I was like, I'm going the next day. I'm going to go to the gym, work out, and then come back to work tomorrow early, because I'm like, if I work harder, there'll be more to that photo the next day. And it's funny. That's what was the kind of driving point for me, that I was like, I'll frame anything, that because the satisfaction was there. And then it kind of fades away. And that's what's tougher about like a remodel, and like, I guess, breaking up from a specialty contractor to being a GC, is that you have to be comfortable with the ebbs and flows. Is that once you get it framed, it's like, oh, that fun part's going to go away until you get to finish. Like, you almost have to battle through all the, mechanicals and all that stuff to kind of get to the finish. And that's the next satisfying part.
Right.
It's true.
That's what people see.
There is instant gratification, obviously, to framing, and with how quickly it can move, and being able to see there's something that's non-existing and then it's existing. Yeah. I also like the aspect of framing where you start getting into planning and accounting for finishes. I think that it moves really fast through framing, and it's super exciting. And then you start getting into figuring out all of the critical details for that job, like right at that rough stage where you start really putting the pieces together. And then after that, it's connect the dots for a really long time. And then you start seeing the finishes to come together. But there definitely is like a high point, and then it plateaus for a while. And that's not to take anything away from all the mechanical trades who come in. Like, just for me, that's not work that I'm doing. I'm more managing that. So at that point, it's more so like leading people where they need to be and trying to communicate properly. And then I get to strap it back on and start executing finishes, which, at that point, is enjoyable. Hopefully you accounted for everything and things start coming together seamlessly.
Yep.
But I haven't done enough for, we'll do framing on our renovations, but I haven't done enough complex new framing. It blows my mind to watch those guys frame effortlessly and figure out, without seeing something or just looking off of a plan. And I know it's not as difficult as it seems if you just break it down and start figuring out ridge height, and where you want your soffit elevation to be and all that stuff. It starts coming together, but not doing it on a daily basis and just looking, it's like nothing was there. Now it's here. How the hell did they get there?
But the naive part is, like, it can go so fast now being a GC and PM. It's like it can come off the rails real fast. Yeah. Because these guys will start going, and if let's just say you order the wrong studs. Like you order 104s instead
Yeah.
of like something else. These some bitches start cranking up walls, and then you're like, all right, that point of no return happens so fast that you have to be there at certain points. Like when lumber gets dropped, I'm measuring stuff like on the like lally column, stupid stuff that that these guys just won't install them because they're not the right height. So then as you load up the house, then these guys are animals. They'll come back and try and level it. But at that point, you're pushing all over the place in all these loads in a house that's like, I know it can be done that way, but is this, to me, I feel like being a GC is our job. I've said this before, is to kind of have everything in place and thought out so the job goes smooth, but the subs make the most amount of money based on efficiency. Because we can absolutely just kill a sub, have not the right equipment there. The site looks like shit. You can't get around. They may have bid something right now. We're about to do a job where we're doing an underground car garage with an addition. And now the client was like, let's do the other side. Let's do a dormer. How much is that going to be? And this framer is like, I don't want to I don't want to say 11 grand and then be stuck with 11 grand.
Yeah.
And it costs me 14. So it's like, you have to lay it out. Like my guy, John, I'm like, hey, just lay it out. This is how many days. If we have someone remove the slate, we're putting on a shed dormer. I'm like, cutting it all back to the ridge. You're looking at what, 2 days, 3 days most. And then you start framing it. You frame your end wall, then you're putting in your roof. I go, you're another 4 days. Then you're sheathing. So let's say you're all in for 7 days and break it out that way. And you go, hey, what's your day rate for 2 guys? Blah, blah. Almost do the proposal with him. Not for him, but go, hey, this is what I'm thinking. So that way you're never like painting a picture that's going, hey, if you say yes, plus, I just trying to give my client a range, but at the same time go, I'm on the same page as you. Like they then know that you're thinking on the same terms as the sub. And that shows they have more faith in you at that point. So it's just trying to break that down. And my guy's like, oh no, I'll tell him it's going to be 14 days. I'm like, that's like my kid who's 10, not showing how he got to the answer of math. Like my kids always, both my boys were like, no, it's 147. And the teacher's like, wrong. And they're like, no, it's right, but you didn't show your work. And they're like, but the answer is still right. And she's like, but I asked you to show your work. So it's the same thing, is show your work. And that's all it ever is. And just breaking it down so that way everyone knows. And then you can go, hey, just forward that email to the client and go, this is what we're thinking. Subs on board, you're on board, give or take for, fasteners and that stuff. But you got to know this industry. That's what kills me.
Yeah.
Too many people are in this that don't know it.
Yeah, and even when you know it, it doesn't always go right, as you just said.
It gives you a slight head start, so that way you trip a little sooner than somebody else. That's all it is. You're still gonna trip.
Yeah, you can recover from your screw ups quicker.
Right. It was crazy because I had never GC'd a house, and let alone it was my own house, and man, it really
Client sucked, right?
Yeah, my wife. It really, overall for a house build, it was super stressful at points, but man, it like really went smoothly. And that's
what points were stressful for you?
Dealing with everything you just said, all the stuff in between. Framing was awesome and it happened fast and we had it covered quick. And then it was like dealing with my electrician, my plumber, people not showing up, and they're all good subs, but everyone's just so busy right now. It's like, they were kind of like, oh, it's Garrett's house. Like, kind of treat me like that, which kind of sucked. But that was the in-between of the framing, after the framing to the finishes was the most stressful by far.
Did you call in favors for that? I'm asking for a friend, like, cause I've been doing my addition and calling in every favor I have.
Yeah. I mean, I said, this is my house, treat me good. I think
but do you think that backfired to, is when clients say, hey, I want to knock down your fee, or can we work on that number a little bit? At that point, I say to them, I go, that's like, now we're knocking this into a favor scenario. Like this is now a favor that we're talking to you, because my subs, we have clients that will pay in full. So if you want this to be treated like a favor, then yeah, we can do that. Which, just to try and put it, we're not really not going to do that, but just to put it in a scenario they're going to understand. So do you think like that was a detriment to that part of it? Because they're like, oh, I'm doing them a favor. I gave them a break. So let me go make some money on Monday, Tuesday. I'll get there Thursday.
I totally think that. Yep.
Yeah.
You should have just lied and been like, yeah, this is a job I have coming up.
Yeah, right. And then move in.
Garrett, why is your wife always on this job?
Yeah, right.
She wants to be a PM.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely think that had a lot to do with it. I mean, also everybody's busy, but yeah, and who knows it. I think they were giving me a break because I know their prices because they do work for me all the time. But I was starting to get very, very frustrated by the end of it. I was glad to see my plumber finally drive away for the last time. He was like the last sub to finally get into my house to give me running water. And, it happened really fast because we put our house on the market. And I'm like, well, we have all this money out of pocket that we've put in here. We just got a loan for this much. And we're probably going to need this much to finish, which means we have to put our house on the market. And we put it on the market, and in 5 days we had 37 showings and 9 offers, and it was under contract in a week. And I was like, shit, I guess I need to finish this. So it got that kind of laid on my stress too. It's like, we have to move in by this date, and everybody has to be done.
Typical client.
Yeah.
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 The Maine real estate market's gone bananas as well, right?
Yes. Oh, dude, crazy. We had I don't mind talking about it. We had a 644 square foot ranch on 3 acres, and it sold. That's 1 bedroom, 1 bath.
Yeah.
It sold for almost $200,000. I bought it for $40,000 5 years ago.
Well played,
Nuts.
sir.
Nuts.
644. That's an inefficiency apartment.
Yeah, my garage in my new house is bigger than my old house.
Humble brag.
Straight up. It's crazy.
I followed your house build. It went up quick and it was nice and neat. I was definitely jealous because I was like, oh man, he doesn't have to do anything anymore. Like when you're done, like when you were framing that, and I was like, I saw the finish line, and I was like, oh, like I can't tell you how badly I want to just pull into a garage and not do anything. Never have to scrape my car again unless I'm at a job site, and then like come home and sit on a back porch. Like I rented a lift this weekend and did like the gable end. Then how about I bought Sherwin-Williams paint? Let's just get this out of the way. Another podcast about you, but we vent on this thing. And it's like I do the whole thing. I get the lift for 1 day, 24 hours. So now I'm going to paint the next day. Go to Sherwin-Williams, grab the paint, blah, blah. Yeah, how about I paid someone to paint the house last time? And so they went to Sherwin-Williams, Benjamin Moore. So I'm up there painting the gable end. I'm colorblind as a sumbitch. And I'm like, dude, this ain't the right color. So I'm at the gable and I text the wife. I'm like, can you come out here? And dude, maybe it's faded in 2 years, but it hasn't faded that much. It's a different color. I went right to Sherwin-Williams. So now it's like, she's like, paint it to the top of the window so you can reach. So now I'm going to end up painting the whole house over.
Oh my God.
But to me, it's like, you have the ability. That's what I loved about it, is that like the accomplishment of not just building your house, but having it complete where you get the recharge now. I know you're doing stuff around the house, but like, it's a different animal. That's what I think when people want to, how do you define success? And it's all different for everybody, but that's how you define it in my book, is that if I can spend time with my family and actually recharge in the weekend, even if it's at my own place and not going away, that'd be huge. That's what I fell in love with for you, is that like, oh, he's at that point. I'm still trying to get there.
It's definitely, it was a dream, like to build my own house, and the fact it was surreal, dude. Like every step, like I had 4 of Maine's greatest framers on site the day we threw up the walls. It was like 4 or 5 of us just like, bah! And just threw the walls up. And it's like that instant gratification, man. I mean, every day I would just get in my truck and stare at it. Like, it's just, it was surreal. It still is, man. When I pull down my driveway, I'm like, man, I'm super grateful. I have a lot of gratitude towards that.
So how did you decide that you were going to build your house?
Well, we want to, start working on a family, and the
talks
market,
about it like it's another project.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to start on that.
Well,
Make sure you don't invite the framers over.
so we were talking about that. We had officially, been like, let's start trying. So that was in the picture, and the market was crazy. We had a savings over the last 3.5 years.
So it was crazy to buy a property or like an existing home.
I didn't want to do it. Our last house, even though it was small, we bought a shithole and we renovated it and made it ours. And I didn't want to do that again. I wanted to build what I envisioned and finish it like I wanted and just be done with it. So that was like, we want to start a family. The market's hot. Let's see if we can get a loan. We got the loan. It was a small loan. We didn't need a lot. We had a good savings, and that was it, man. That's all she wrote. We got the site work and the foundation in, and I said, all right, we're going to cap it for the winter, and materials are hopefully going to go down next year. And then I got it capped, and I was standing on it, and I said, I can't fucking slow down. I can't stop now. And I was like, we're doing this. And thank God I did, because we probably saved 30,000 maybe, because materials, as we all know, they were crazy last fall, but they were even crazier this winter. So I am so glad that, that I did it, because I was paying like $40 for a sheet of Advantech last year when I framed it. And I'm like, I can't believe how much I'm paying for this. And now that stuff's what, like $108 a sheet. I mean, it's,
and I don't know why.
Me either, man. That's another subject. That's just crazy, man.
Yeah, I just got a piece of 3/8 to pack out walls, and I just stopped at Depot on the way home from work on Friday, and it was $52 and change, and it was like cupped like a banana. Yeah. I'm like, I just paid $52 for this. This is crazy.
Yeah. That's the crazy thing too, is that we're paying more money, and I feel like it's the crappiest lumber I've ever seen.
I know.
It's like coming out. I'm like, where did this come from? Like, I was getting PT 6x6s last year that were like the weirdest post I've ever seen. It was wild. It's been wild. Been a wild ride.
So you guys basically said, let's build our forever or long-term home. Just made a decision, figured out how much money you thought you needed to get going on it. Was it more calculated than that, or was this just, hey, we can make this happen right now and capitalize on selling our house?
No, yeah, I mean, we dialed it in hard, man. I mean, I got all the pricing from the site work to the frame to the finishes. I mean, we had a spreadsheet, and we were like, we could probably do this if it works out, and selling our house for what we sold it for was like the icing on the cake. I mean, once we got that check, we were like, man, it was risky a little bit. We had a lot out of pocket, but it worked in our favor, and we definitely had it drawn out, though. We weren't just like, let's do it.
Yeah. So were you guys able to kind of put input on design? Did you guys hire an architect, or was it something that you kind of took plans and then altered them yourselves?
So my lumberyard has a in-house design and architect, like designer and engineer. So we worked with them, and we're like, so this is what we want. I had a really cool design lady at that point. She actually left, which is a bummer. And she was like, what do you think of this? And she hit it out of the park first try. Like first draft, we were like, that's it. And we made a few on-site, field changes, but pretty much went right off the drawing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that would be one of the bigger hangups for me if I had to design something where I was like, I'm going to be in this a really long time. What do I want it to be like? I don't know how quick that process would be for me, especially once now my wife's involved in the decisions and thinking that I'm doing a bunch of it myself. I think I'd drag my feet on that end.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I don't know if it'd be a one and done type of thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was a few conversations, but the actual draft was we were like, man, she just hit it out of the park, dude. It was awesome.
So that was your first new build, first home build,
Yep.
and now you lined up a custom. Do you think that the custom came on board because of seeing that, or is somebody just?
So yeah, it 100% came on. A guy that actually follows me on Instagram. He's a pretty successful business owner around here with a glass company and a couple of restaurants. And I actually used to skate with him. He's an ex-professional skateboarder. So he's followed me on Instagram before I got sober to this point. And he emailed me one day and said, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you." And I was like, wow, I haven't heard from this guy forever. And we had a phone call, and he said, I didn't realize that you built homes. And I'm like, yeah, I'm building my own house right now. He's like, I know, I've seen it, and it's really awesome. Like I have a house design, and we have the land, and I'd really like to meet you out there and talk about this. And I said, okay, cool. Yeah, sounds good. So we set a date, and the craziest part about that whole story is that I was in bed one night talking to Megan, and we were in our house, and I said, I really like building houses. I said, custom houses. I said, this has been one of the best experiences of my life. Granted, it was my own home, but to see it all come together from a bunch of trees grown in by some water and then cleared, foundation, framed, all of it. And I got a hand in all of it. It was really cool. And I'm like, I'd really like to maybe push my business in this direction. And then 2 days later, he called, I got that email, and I'm like, there's no coincidences. And it just ended up working out. We met on site. We talked about it. He said, why don't you give me a bid and let me know? I'm not talking to any other contractors. We're just kind of seeing if it's going to be in our budget. And I put it all together. I stared at it for like a week because it was the largest numbers I've ever dealt with. And I submitted. We did it in phases. We did phase 1, phase 2, and then phase 3 will be the landscaping, the outside stuff. So phase 1 was site work to a watertight structure, window doors. Phase 2 is all of the mechanicals, all of the finishes, and the siding. And then phase 3, like I said, will be like the landscapes. And I gave him phase 1, and he said, I sent it. I was like, send. And he emailed me back in like 2 minutes and was like, yep, let's do it. And I was like,
how did you look that over that quickly?
I was like, I think he just had a number in his head.
Yeah.
And it was a big number, and he took it, and here we are now, blowing shit up, and my site guy's hating his life because he's been crushing rocks for 2.5 weeks. And hopefully have a foundation in by August, and then frame in by September.
So what was your biggest concern with writing that first proposal? For that something that big, besides the numbers being larger, did you have to evaluate the subpool that you had?
Yeah, I mean, so I have my site guy. I use him for everything. He did my house. He does all my other jobs. It was kind of just like hoping that they were sure on their end, which he's maybe thinking otherwise right now. But I didn't have a lot of concerns. It was just like, I think I was more anxious about like, what if he thinks this is too much and I don't get the job? Because I was really excited about it. Because there wasn't a ton involved. It's site work, foundation, and then my sub for framing. So it was pretty much 3 guys involved, and everybody was pretty sure on their estimates. So it was the numbers, man. I know you said not the numbers, but it was the numbers. I was like, that's a lot of money.
I mean, there's definitely numbers parts of it, but it's also that I think what you're getting at is something that I think a lot of us have, is that you get excited about the prospect of that project. And it's like, now that I've been in it for forever, and people are going to say I'm a pessimistic, and I'm really not. I'm like one of the most optimistic people in the universe. It just, I'm honest in this podcast where it's like, yeah, there's a lot of products that I'm like, dude, this is like we have like 3 brownstones in Boston. I remember like 7-8 years ago, I was like, all I ever want is my own brownstone to renovate. Now we have 3 of them. We've done 4 of them already. And it's like, but now it's like, what would I have looked for? Like when you built your house, it's like, all right, you flagged a few areas that you were like, shit, I breezed over that in the test, but I should have dialed in on that. And I guess it's the same thing that some of the times people are like, oh, this is the biggest thing I have. I can't tell you how many people on social media I talk to like, I'm growing like crazy. I got all this work. And it's like, is it the right work? Is it the work that's going to carry your career for the next 15 years? And I think what I was trying to get at was, yeah, the numbers are big, but like, it's like everywhere I walk around, it's the what ifs. It's like, all right, if I had the blast, did I write that in, which you are, but it's like, did I look for that? Like utilities, is it septic? Is the septic approved? Did I have something to look at? I mean, for you not to have built something except for your own home and to jump into this, I get that you're eager and hungry, but I'm just trying to think of like, what was your concerns for someone in the same spot as you right now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm glad that you actually said utilities, because we do have to hook in to the city, which we had to blast all the way down to it. I since I had just built my own house, it was fresh in my mind of all the process that I need to go through. And when I went to the site, I looked at it. I saw what was around it. There was a lot of rock, and we were really high up. So I'm like, dude, we're blasting this. And anybody that overlooks something like that, I mean, it was a lot of money to blast that. That could be a huge loss if you didn't examine the site properly and didn't put something like that in your bid. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I feel like with it being fresh in my head for my house, I feel like I was really confident that all my ducks were in a row, and my site guy and I were working on the same page. We got the utility guys, everybody was just clicking, and it all just kind of came together. If someone was in my shoes, I would just say what I said, be cautious, make sure, you're checking everything off that needs to be done to make this site build ready, and go from there. I hope that answered your question.
No, it definitely did. Yeah.
Is this job close to where you live?
It is. It's like 15 minutes from my house, which is awesome.
So what did you have lined up prior to this? Did you have to jockey things around, or did you have an opening that you were able to squeeze this in? I know it's more managing at this point, but it's going to be workload on your plate regardless.
For sure. So how I did it too was I have since I am doing some of the carpentry, any phase of carpentry that I was doing, I did it as a bid, like as I was getting a job. And then I said, in the contract, we agreed on a price I think it's going to take me a whole year. That's what I'm bidding it as. I have a general contractor's fee. So no matter how much I screw up and don't make any money on anything else, I will make my GC fee. So it's close, and I have a lot of work right now, but the way it worked out with all the sub work that was involved, I was able to make it happen, and kind of, I didn't have to juggle too much around it. It kind of just worked out really well.
That's the hardest thing for me, that I'm always booking so far out in advance and then trying to work 1 or 2 jobs at a time. There's always changes working in old homes and doing renovations, and nothing goes according to plan. So nailing down a schedule, I don't have manpower to just throw at a job and say, hey, we're going to start this on August 1st, and then I'll make sure that the crews are there. That's just not how it works. If I'm still on a job, I'm not going to pull off and start something else. And it'll the
Right.
same case, when I'm on their job, if they add something or change something, we run into something, I'm not going to be hustling to get out of there. But I always, you get hung up on a job and you start something else, you fill in with other things, you get to the people that have been waiting for odds and ends to get done who don't want to use somebody else. And I feel as though I can never dial in an exact date as to when things are going to happen. And I can't figure out 6 months in advance how the hell I'm going to make all of this work. And then as you're going, somehow things just work out. And like you say, hey, I can get 2 days here, I can get there, the electrician's going to be there, so I can get there and then scoot out and then get the countertop. And you just end up making it work real time. Obviously you can't overload yourself that you're not going to be able to handle it, but it's intense knowing that you're lining up that much work in advance. You still want to self-perform some, and you have other customers to get to that are waiting for you.
Yeah, it's funny that you just said all of that, because before last week, because of all this COVID stuff with cabinets and things, nothing was going right. For like, I had a job going, and we started a kitchen. It all started with a kitchen. I started a kitchen, and the pantry cabinet. One of the pantry cabinets came the wrong height size. Well, cabinets right now for this line are 16 to 18 weeks out. Doesn't matter if it's one cabinet or a whole kitchen. That's just it. And so they're like, okay, so I did all I could, got the tile done, got the backsplash, got the cabinets installed. One cabinet's missing, no big deal. Got crown halfway done, couldn't finish it because the cabinet's not there. So I'm like, well, shit, now I got to start another job. So I've done all I can here. I got to go to my next customer. They're waiting on me. So started that job. I had 5 jobs going, and all of it kept happening. It was like, that's back ordered. Oh, the waiting on the windows. They were supposed to be in, sorry. And I've been planning ahead, man. Like, I've been ordering, like our last deck we finished, I ordered those railings 3 months ago, and they still were late. Like, I couldn't win. And man, I was getting so stressed out. And finally, as of last week, I'm down to the job I'm on right now. That kitchen cabinet's supposed to show up. That kitchen's still going. The people have a functional kitchen, but it's still going. It's supposed to show up here next week. And once I have that done, I'll have one job going and the custom. And that's really where I want to be. When you start juggling, I don't have the manpower either. I have one guy that works for me and a couple of sub carpenters that I use here and there. And the guy that works for me, he's green. He knows nothing. Like, I can't leave him alone unless it's like picking up trash or maybe putting some screws in deck boards. Like, I'm teaching him. I'm actually trying to take the time, because I think he wants it. He's super eager. He shows up on time. He works hard. He's got a good attitude. He's like taking notes. I'm not even kidding. The guy brings a notebook. He brings a notebook and he's like, okay, yeah. And he's going home at night and he comes in and he's like, dude, I was looking over all that. And it's pretty cool, but he's just learning. So I don't have the manpower. So that was super stressful. Like, I was up to I was about to lose it, and I'm glad that it's dwindled down. I'm feeling a lot more relief in my day-to-day right now with the business, because I'm just not big enough to be handling 5 jobs going on. That's just insanity.
And how are those products broken out? Because I know everyone does things differently, where it's done on milestones, how you get paid, or like percentage complete, and having all those open-ended and loose ends. How did that work for? You might have 5 open jobs, but there might be nothing that's billable. How'd that work?
Yeah, so I do a deposit down when they sign a contract, which is kind of like my holding fee to get you on my schedule. That goes into an account that I don't even have a debit card for. I just throw it in there. Okay, you're on my schedule. And then before I start the job, I get a percentage up front, which usually covers most of the materials. And then as I go through the job, depending on how long it is, if it's a week job, okay, you've given me this much, you're going to owe me this much at the end. If it's a long job, I do pretty much a payment plan, and like weekly, I get a draw. So the final payment isn't a lot. So, on some of those jobs, they only owed me a couple grand, $3,000, but it was still, a couple grand, $3,000 that, would be nice to go into the bank account. So, I had quite a bit of money hanging out there. It was all little amounts, but it all added up.
It's kind of nice though. Be like, as soon as I wrap this stuff up, that's money that you've kind of written off, because you're
Right.
like, oh, I'm done with those jobs and on to the next. And all of a sudden you're starting to clean up little money here and there.
Right. Right.
I think it's tough. I always, even when I look at bidding jobs and structuring fees on jobs, I choose worst case when I'm doing something, that if I get slammed or if I get hurt or if I just can't handle it, that I could still sub that job out and make money on it. so that I'm not going to go in the hole if something were to happen and I'm like, you know what, I just can't do the tile on that job. I'm going to have to sub it out. I don't want a rate for myself that's going to be less than a subs number, or, you know, hey, I'm going to do this job for the carpentry aspect of it, and then the rest of my numbers are going to be really tight because I want this job. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make sure that I'm covered worst case, that if I end up not being able to or something happens, that at least I'm still making money while that work is going on.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Total sense.
Because it's I mean, what we do, the way that we're structured and subbing work out, it's probably different on your custom, but is much different than what John and Nick are doing with the cost plus contract, where their margins on those numbers are lower than what ours are. You know, when we're subbing a job out and it's an electrician, a plumber, drywaller, I think that because it's a smaller number and the management fee isn't necessarily there, our markups on those subs can be a higher percentage than what John and Nick oftentimes are doing, so that we are able to get those subs on job and still at least squeak by with a little bit of money in our pocket, to cover our management time.
Right. I agree.
John, your numbers on your subs and all that stuff, your fee, it's not high, right? It's like 14% or something like that, you said?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we have a management number that's its own
Yeah.
line item, but our markup on each sub is pretty low. And that's for new construction. But even still, our renovation numbers, they don't creep up. I mean, there's some people are getting 30%, but
Yeah.
not in the size. There's almost a diminished return on some of the sizes of these projects.
Yeah, because I mean, ours are small enough, you know, that I'm putting anywhere 25 to 35% on material and subs, but our overall numbers aren't as large. So I have to kind of offset the fact that, you know, it's a $5,000-$10,000 plumbing contract. I need to make that worth my time and the management of that, where it's like, if I'm putting 35% on that, it may seem like a lot, but then I'm on site for 3 days going over things for a couple hours each day, and that gets eaten up pretty quickly. You know, I'm not managing a plumber for 2 months in a 10,000 square foot house.
So you're marking that up, Tyler, and that is also your management.
No, so I started doing it a little bit differently. I'll mark up my subs, to make a little bit of money on my subs and deal with the headaches, and like, I know that there's things I'm gonna have to clean up and everything else, and just make money on my subs. And then I started throwing in a certain amount of time for managing jobs too, like a separate line item from that. So I now have a markup on my subcontractors, and then I'm putting in a wage for myself or whoever's working for me to manage that job. So if I think I have 5 days managing subs on that job, I'm going to get paid a management rate, which isn't going to be my rate for tool belt on, but at least I'm covered for the back and forth trips there. And then I'm also going to make money on whatever their number is. So when I'm submitting that spreadsheet to my customers, it has my subs number with a markup. And then I also do have a line item for management.
Did you see any pushback when you made that change?
No, I actually think it was a little bit better, because it's kind of shifting things around, right? Where like, now it's not just all on the sub and it's not just all on management. It's like an extra line item there, which I'm not necessarily looking to hide things, but just, I think that people can swallow that pill a little bit easier when they see like, okay, hey, yeah, I mark up all my subs, I mark up all my material, and then I have this many days managing those subs. And they'll ask you why, and you can get into why and explaining to them, and that, you know, you're warranting that work. So if in a year from now you have to get a hold of the plumber to get out there to fix a fixture, that's part of the markup on my plumber's end. That's not on my straight management for the job. But I think it's probably a little more well received at this point, just because it's just more communication. It's more transparency now, where I'm not like, hey, you know, I want to make a little bit more on this drywall guy, I'm going to bump up my margin and worry about how much I'm making on him. No, I can say, well, I want to make 25% across the board on whatever my subs are, And I think that, I have a half day meeting with him to measure the job, a half day making sure it's cleaned up. And so I think it's a little bit, the people see more of what goes into it that way.
Yeah. Garrett, how do you have it broken out?
I don't have a management fee. I kind of include that. I kind of did what Tyler did, what he just said prior to that. I kind of mark my subs up a little higher, and that kind of, saves me from all the time that I'm going to have to spend with them. Other than that, I just break out, in my bids, I break out it in lines from the stages of the job. And then I have my labor at the end. I just throw my labor number in. This is what it is for me to do the job. And I don't have too many people bat an eye. Sometimes people are like, wow, it's a lot of money you're making. But, there's also a lot that goes into that number. And usually if they hire me, they understand, halfway through the job, why I am what I am. Because I didn't know my worth ever, for a long time. And I was just saying it to Johnny today, my new guy, and it's like I have a certain way I'm going to do a job and a certain way I'm going to build something. And if you don't want to hire me because I'm too high, or you want me to do something different, I'm not really about it. Like, I have a way, it works, it's strong, it's good, I can warranty it, I'm comfortable with it, I can walk away, I can sleep at night, and this is how I'm going to do it. So if you don't like it, then I'm just not the contractor for you. And I can say that right now because I'm busy. Maybe there's going to come a time where I can't do that. But it's just like the little things, man. Like, we're building a deck right now. Well, last year, actually 2 years ago, I only use Technopost. I only use helical piers. I will not do sonotubes anymore. I don't do them. They dig them down 4 feet in the ground. They're still going to move. You use a helical pier, that thing's staying there. It's not going anywhere. That's strict. I'm like, this is how I build my decks. Helical piers and glue lambs. I only use glue lambs for my beams now. One solid beam, you can span longer distances. It's less posts you have to use. Like, I have these methods, and they work, and they make a really solid product. So that's the difference between the guy that's gonna, use a 2x6 for a carrying beam and not a 28-foot glue lamb like on our.
You just need more posts.
and it's like, when people see me show up and they see, like, the woman we're doing a deck for right now, she is home working, and she is like, she saw the beam show up today. We have these 28-foot 6x6 glue lamps, and she's like, wow, like, and she sees us put them in, and it's just like, it's quicker. First off, it's more efficient, and it's just a better product. Like,
yeah,
like, I didn't have to. I had Technopost show up. They did 6 helical piers in an hour, and then we already have the deck like halfway framed today. So that's just like, you can't beat it, man.
So do you think that you just said that you almost gave your, I don't want to say, like, you're like, I'm busy, so maybe that's why I say this. How much of this do you chalk up to being busy, your confident level, or actually it's just experience? Like, regardless if you're busy, I mean, yeah, you might bid things a little tighter, but you won't lose that confidence. You won't compromise product because you know that it's going to be like that favor scenario. You do this, but you're the one that owns that. You're the one they're going to call regardless of what that conversation was. When it's like, hey, I could do this. Yeah, you know what? Put those posts, the footings 10 feet apart and do the 2x6s. If you have that verbal conversation, when it starts warping, that conversation evaporates so fast that you can't try and it's like trying to catch a balloon when it's starting to float away. No matter what you do, you're not going to grow. You're not going to fly. You're not going to be able to chase it down and get it. It's gone. So it's like, I think you almost gave the credit to the market being busy or you being busy, but it's really your confidence.
Yeah, I guess I did kind of say that. Yeah.
I don't think that they're necessarily independent of each other as well, though, because you're busy because of your experience, you're confident because of your experience. I think that all of that kind of circles back to doing the right thing, putting out the right product, charging a fair price, and knowing your worth, which I believe comes with experience. I think that the more that you do something, the more mistakes you make, the more experience you have. You know where your numbers are, where you can make money, what works. And I think that that does give you, you know, a little bit of swagger and confidence when you're walking into a job and there's another deck guy bidding that job and you say, hey, this is what we do versus what other people are doing and why. And this is why my number is the where it is. And if you don't like that, then there's people who do, you know, a more standard or more typical deck, and you can go that route, but that's just not what we do.
Right.
But I think the hardest part is how do you find that client? Like, you almost have to say that. It's like, hey, I know who else is going to walk into this job. They're going to do it this way, this way, and this way. And this is why in 12 years, you're replacing X, Y, Z. So if you want that, by all means, knock your socks off. And you got to see how they react. It's
Right.
like when we say to somebody, hey, you know, like we want to do a bathroom over, and you know they haven't touched on a number yet, like a master, and it's like, you know, that master is like 160K, and they're like, their eyes blow up, and you're like, all right, well, guess what? We're not the right fit. Or if they're like, yeah, it's exactly what we expected. You know, you tell us someone, or we get a lot of clients that go, hey, we have this bag of money, and this is our priority list. What can we get done? That's the best conversation. And then
Right.
we don't, and again, we're also not taking advantage of that, going, all right, we got this much money to blow on, you know, this. It's more of like, hey, what can we get the most? What will be the biggest impact for these people in this family with that money, the best use of it? So I think it's a little bit of both, you know.
I started doing a questionnaire last year. So if someone reaches out to me and says, hey, you know, whether it's a referral or a new customer, I send out, I say, yeah, no, sounds great. You know, I'm going to send you a questionnaire. What's your email? And I shoot it over to them, and it's got like 6 questions on it. It's pretty much like you just said, what is your budget? What is the scope of work? Where do you live? Blah, blah, blah. And it's just 6 really straight up questions. And usually by reading that, I can say, okay, this person's going to be worth meeting with and actually talking about the job. Or it's kind of like, I'm just not the contractor for you.
But they all lie on that thing.
Right.
you almost have to go to the first meeting to figure out which one of those things are false answers.
Right. Yeah, that's probably a good point. I feel like it kind of weeded out a lot of tire kickers for me, though, because when I got hurt last year, when I cut my finger, I couldn't work. You know, I couldn't use my hand. And I was just like, you know, my guys, I had 2 guys that knew what they were doing at that point. They were crushing stuff for me. And I was out just going to bid after bid after bid to look at jobs. And it was just like tire kicker after tire kicker. So I kind of sat down, put this questionnaire. I mean, it's helped me. It has definitely had good effects, but I guess some people could be lying.
I say that again as the optimistic guy. I don't want people to put this questionnaire and go like, I put this questionnaire on my website, my world's solved.
Right.
You know, that's part of the whole scenario is part of the growth process of, having that questionnaire. It's funny. We just did our website over and launched it. And one of the things that just disappeared was the questionnaire. Now it's just like, hey, do you want to do a project? And it's like, they had to write a paragraph. And I'm like, oh, when I wrote my website, it was like based on Tyler's whole vetting process. It was like the best thing ever. I was like, I got this, got all these questions. And yeah, you're right. And then, but it's almost like you paint this picture that if you know they're going to lie on the budget, they won't lie in scope. So it's like you can figure out where these things will be and go, hey, all right, well, we're close. You know, even if they lied on the budget and said 550, we're at 720. At least they're not saying it's 200,000. I mean, for a long time, for different businesses I helped run, when we did the green building one, I feel like that entire industry it's changed now. I think is that it was like people that had 200K, but they want to stretch it to a $400,000 budget. Every single person we met, they were trying to squeeze that money and try and make it longer and stretch it. And it's like, dude, this is only going to be a disaster. And we take those jobs on because we needed it. We needed the work back then. And it was a nightmare every time because things would come up and then you stretch the budget. You know, they didn't have it. So it was like to do it right, you were having to compromise the product every step of the way. And it was a nightmare. I mean, this market now is great and there's a lot more forgiveness in it. But back then this is back in, I don't even know. You know, I'll have to figure it out. Maybe 08, 09.
I think everything changes with what you're doing too, and even your vetting for customers and what's important to you and what you want to know. Um, and even what I think I wanted to know 5 years ago and what I want to know from customers now, those questions that are critical to me, for kind of if I want to spend more time working or looking into a potential fit for a customer are different now than what I thought they would be 5 years ago. And a lot of it's not even those concrete um, factors or like the budget number and everything else, because that's fairly simple to sort out. That doesn't take that much time. Is digging into more so, like Garrett said, why are you coming to me? What do you want? What's important to you? What are you looking for? What were pinch points with you before, to make sure that they basically moving forward see eye to eye with you, and that they are coming to you because they like what you do, or that you're offering something that the guy or girl next door, or you know other companies aren't willing to do for them. Because then that's the fit, that's the home run there, because now they just want you, right? They don't
Right.
they don't want what the other deck guy does, because they want your product and they want your efficiencies and they want the warranty and they just want peace of mind. I think so much of it just comes down to trusting people, and I think
Yeah.
that there's a lot of issues with our industry and people not being trustworthy or not conveying who they really are. And I think that those return customers, that's such a pleasurable experience, because they
Yeah.
know who you are and they trust you already. They
Yeah.
they know your product, they know your systems, they know that you're trustworthy, you're not going to take advantage of them. So if you can try and gain that trust, or figure out how to establish some of that trust with the first time that you're working for that customer, those are the questions that I'm asking up front now, when as we progress further along in that dating, so to speak, is how do I establish this trust that you feel like a return customer and you allow me the artistic freedom to make decisions, and I don't have to walk every single thing by you. That's what I want to do with customers, so that the first time I'm working with somebody, it feels like they're a return customer.
I
And
like
then
that.
they're not looking at every single, I mean, even when I used to bid jobs, based on article I read in JLC, where it's like, I'm going to give you a price for my job, and it on a small job, it's going to be lump sum, and I'm not going to give you a line item budget, because I don't want it to be a la carte where you can pick things and choose things. And now I do it completely different. I'm using a spreadsheet, thank you, John, to develop costing and budgeting for projects. So why would I not want to show my customer that? Like, I'm not looking to hide money anywhere. If I want to put $5,000 extra on the carpentry because that's what I want to make on it, I'll show the customer that. And like, if that's not what they want to pay for that, then we can discuss that, or figure out, how we can get it down from there, or value engineer it, or change scope. But why would I not show them that? For me, that's just me being more open, more honest. If I have nothing to hide and I want them to trust me, I should be able to show them everything.
Right.
And for me, that creates um, a much better rapport with customers, especially the first time that I'm working for them, because then they can go through that with a fine tooth comb and they can compare it to this person and compare it to that person. And then if you're a trustworthy person, you believe in your product and you believe in your numbers, you can go through every one of those numbers and explain to that customer why that number is that number. And you shouldn't feel badly about it.
Right.
You know what's crazy is that I think we've all been at that meeting where if you presented bigger numbers, people are like, "Oh, I don't want to spend that." But I've been at meetings where you break it all down and they go, the numbers does seem high, but when it's broken down, they all make sense.
100%.
And they always get that. And that's the trigger is that I've written, I think we all start writing bids in the beginning that are like lump sum. It's like carpentry's this. And it's like, it might be a deck, it might be an addition, but carpentry's all in there. And then what happens is they go, again, you're trying to build that trust. So they go, yeah, hey, we don't have that kind of healthy budget. Can we knock it down a little bit? And now you're then told to go back after you've done this whole estimating process and go, hey, let me try and break this out. When you didn't do the work in the beginning.
Yeah. What did I charge for carpentry?
Yeah. And then it takes you 2.5 weeks or a month to get back to them when it should have already been dialed in. And then you've lost them. You've lost the whole connection that you took a month and a half to build. And then you think it's over because you put that quote out there. And then you almost feel resentment that they want to go down or they want to change a different part of it. And then you have to go back and manipulate and fudge these numbers. And it's like, dude, this is all on me. This is all on the back end. And if I don't, like right now, I'm working on a massive spreadsheet that literally we get a couple of things that come in and it's like, hey, what do you think this is to build? And it's like, I don't know. Like, and you don't want to go, hey, it's let's just say $400 a square foot. And it's like, but I don't know. That's throwing shit against the wall.
Right.
For me, because by the time we get to that point where this means something, that could be like I said to clients now, I go, you could spend $600 a square foot in a kitchen, but you might spend $200 in a whole bunch of other rooms. I go, without details and a lot of products that we do, like design build's a whole different word. I'm going to go down a different road in a minute, but like we're literally designing stuff. Like I've built houses where we build foundations and we don't have the structural even submitted yet. And it's like you're designing it as you go. And how are you supposed to come up with a budget? So it's really tough. But my point is that if you break it all out and write it all down, like we said about that dormer addition for my framer, if they go, hey, if that dormer was like, let's say it was 2 dormers instead, and you broke it all down for that person, they go, hey, we can't afford that. Now you can easily go back and go, all right, let me cut that in half because maybe we'll do 1 dormer on the right side and phase out the second one. But it's all there. If you're going to really put the legwork in and then do it, and then why wouldn't you show off your work?
Yeah.
Like we talked about before, it's like, if I do all this and honestly, that spreadsheet tile that you have, there's a lot of stuff in there that's BS.
Yeah.
But it's from decades of putting it together. And it's like, I put it in there. So I go, all right, is there a pergola? Is there like stuff that I know is not, then I can delete it. But there's always, we have a folder in our Dropbox. It's like a template folder. And it's the beginning of the beginning for everything, whether it's the subcontractor tree for saving all our files that we start a new file on, or it's this proposal and this line item that's 400 line items. Yeah, by the time we're done for that client, it is customized. But when I first run through it, like there's one budget line item that's like, it's like a structural engineering extras. It's like I took the average of the last 4 projects and just the extra, whether it's hangers, like truss spacers, whatever it is, and it spits out me a number at like $4,100.35. And dude, I always check that one at the end of every job. I'm like, dude, I still can't remove that button because everyone's like, can we get rid of this? Can we get rid of that? And it's like, no, we need that. And then I always go back and it's like, no, we burn that one every single time.
Yeah.
And the beauty is that if you don't, it goes back into the piggy bank because it's cost plus. So, hey, if we don't use that line item, dude, it goes back. And that's the beauty of it, that transparency is that, you know, I feel like there's so many contractors out there that try and get the biggest change order right away. Like they're trying to get the most money out of them right away. Instead of like, hey, they're going to spend $100,000. Let's just figure out what's going to be. But I've had GCs I've worked for, they're like, yeah, write that change order for like $47,000. It's like, based on what information? Like Jesus. What? And they're just trying to get money out of them because they want to set the tone and they want to have cushion or contingency in the project. And so I think that's tough is with cost plus for me, I've done the lump sums. I've also done it where it's lump sum and milestone based, which I'll never do. I think that's an absolute nightmare.
What do you mean by milestone based?
Like, let's say, hey, you do a deposit and then it's like, hey, start of lumber. And then you do I'll start a frame, and then you do like rough inspections is your milestone. And then your next milestone is insulation. And then your next milestone is drywall. And you're waiting for money on all those points. And it's like, whoa, what happens if someone doesn't make a decision? Then no payments happen. And that's where I feel like a lot of people, like we've had one project that's on hold for a month because their HVAC guy who they brought in, we were cool. They were like, yeah, bring him in. They brought an electrician. He never had insurance.
Oh my God.
So when he went to pull a permit and he's like, oh, you know, blah, blah. We had to call the inspectional services and be like, hey, what's the deal? And they're like, he hasn't pulled anything. And thank God it wasn't one of our guys. Because imagine having to pause for a month. But it's like, if I didn't have other products running, making money for us, like everyone toys with this. Like I wish like you have your goal is to have this one custom and maybe one project running at the same time. Like if that deck runs you 7 weeks, you'll then put another project behind that and still have the custom, right? So for that one custom, it's going to take you 2 years to build. You might do 14 other projects, you know, one after another in sequence. It's like, dude, that'd be a dream. Like I would love to do. Like right now, it's like we're looking at 3 products that we're working with. That's like maybe Metro West, instead of doing 5 to 7 products, we do 3. Yeah, you know, and that's a sweet spot. But the fear is that if something slows down, I also don't want to pressure a client. I think we manage regret is the biggest thing we do in the job. Is I don't want to pressure them to make a decision, the wrong decision, because we're trying to keep things moving. You know, obviously I want things to move, but I don't want them to move at the sacrifice of a client. Like, hey, I need this paint color, and they just pick some paint color for the exterior because we have to keep moving. That's I'd rather pause it, but I need to have a place for my people to go. And it's just trying to find, you know, the right personnel that can handle it. I don't know. It's
I kind of feel the same way about your milestone logic there, like with T&M. Like I don't do anything for time and material. Like I'm not going to show up and start a job and hope that you pay me money. I know a lot of guys on Instagram and stuff will reach out and kind of talk shop, and a lot of guys are doing T&M, and I just disagree with it. The cost plus sounds cool. I've never done that, but I haven't. I think I've gotten my lump sum bids down pretty good where I haven't lost money yet, thankfully. But yeah, T&M, man, I'm not about that.
I think that it all depends. It depends on what type of work you're doing as well. I think with T&M, you can't just show up and say, hey, I'm working T&M. You still have to establish an accurate, comprehensive budget there.
Totally. It all depends. If you're a handyman,
yeah,
and you have a day rate and you go, hey, I'm going to probably be here for 3 days, I think you're setting the tone. It's like you're going to get a 10 grand bill at the end of day 2.
Right. I do it even like small stuff. I have customers who come to me, and I don't know, I enjoy little small jobs where it's like a 1-day job, a 2-day job, 3 because you can squeak them in, and to me it's like extra money because it's something, you know, you squeeze something else in or something that's not paying. So those little jobs where it's, you know, you do a dozen of them throughout the year and it's like, wow, I have extra 12 grand based on stuff that you normally most people would turn down, and people find it's difficult to get people in to do those small jobs. But all the time I'll tell people, hey, here's a half day and a full day rate for me, and we're kind of going to go off of those rates, and I'll come work for you. I think it's going to take 2.5 days, but whatever it is. And you get on site and they see your pace and how you work and skip lunch and just work like a maniac, and there's usually no issue with it. But I do get a deposit for most of those jobs.
Do you have to be licensed down your way?
Technically, yes. So, but it's not really a license. It's basically a registration with a division of consumer affairs that you pay, I don't know, $70 a year every 2 years or something, and they renew your business license, but there's no test or anything like that.
Right.
So even, I mean, that's the issue that we have. You know, if I have, that's why inspectors can be such a pain in the butt down here, because there's zero recourse for them as far as liability goes. So if an electrician or a plumber screws something up, they can come after their license, right? And they can't open up a business and get a new plumbing or electrical license. It doesn't work that way. But with contractors, it's just forming an LLC and then registering it with the Division of Consumer Affairs. So if there were a huge issue or a catastrophic failure or a legal matter, you could basically close up shop, form a new LLC for $1,200-1,500 and register the business and be right back in business.
Right.
So like anytime you have any sort of change on our end of the job during inspections, it's like I have to get an architect or an engineer to sign off on an as-built, especially if it's some place that you typically don't work, because it just comes down to liability. There's no recourse.
Right. Yeah. It's wild up here. Like, obviously no licenses needed. Anybody can swing a hammer and be a carpenter, but it's like, it all depends on what town you're in. Like for inspections, it's like some towns you need inspections for every phase. Some towns are like, oh, I'll just come see it when it's done. It's crazy. We built a garage a couple of months ago, and it's like, I was like, oh, do you need to see the framing inspection? The guy's like, no, I'll just come see it when it's done. It's like, so when it's all covered up and you can't see anything, like that's when and this is in Brunswick, I was like, oh, they're going to be a pain in the ass here. And he was like, no, I'll just come see it when it's all done. I'm like, all right, dude. Like this is why, I compete with just craziness. My last job, we were talking about it before, knowing your worth and bidding up against people. I gave these people a deck to fully reside their house. All new AZEK trims, vinyl siding, AZEK trims with a rabbit, making it look pretty, and a brand new deck. And they got 4 other bids, and there was bids. They told me the numbers. They actually told me, they're like, you were the highest by a long stretch. And I'm like, well, like,
perfect.
I'm like, if you don't mind me asking, like by a long stretch, what do you mean? and they told me some of the numbers, and I'm like, listen, this is the siding you're getting, this is the decking you're getting AZEK, this is the railings. I was so specific with everything. I'm like, there is no way these guys can come in and do the job for what they're saying. I'm like, I can't even buy materials for what they're saying they're going to do the whole entire job. Well, they said we're going to get exactly what you're pricing. I'm like, well, you're not. Like, they're lying. And I ended up getting the job, which was a great feeling. And literally the woman was like, she was the greatest customer, and she cried at the end, like straight up, can't make it up. She had tears, and she was like, it's just so beautiful. Like, we gave her exactly what she wanted and more. I stuck by my price. I did okay on the job, and now I have a new customer. And it's just like, these guys out driving minivans with boat trailers, loading up decking, they're just trying to fucking get jobs. They don't care. Tail light warranty, see you later. They don't care about that relationship. And that's, like you were saying earlier, that's what it's all about, gaining the trust.
But sometimes you don't know. Like, we've all been there in the beginning where, I remember I did a deck for my wife. She was my girlfriend at the time, her grandparents' house. And I remember I bought those pre-cut treads at Homies.
Right.
Stringers.
2x10s.
Yeah, right. And I was like, and I never cut it down. So like it goes 8, 8, 8, 3. And dude, I have the most, that's the biggest regret I ever have. They sold the house, but it was like every time we went over there, as I got older and my career kind of grew, that fucking thing haunted me.
That's
forever.
A tripping hazard, Johnny.
No, and that's how we'd go. That would be when we'd always go in through the front door. And then as time went on, the only way anyone ever entered was through the back, through that stair. And I was like, oh my God, like everyone's going to go through this stair? And then they'd walk in and be like, hey, deck's holding up good, John. And I'm like, don't remind anyone that I built that. Like, how about no? And it was like those moments. But my point, when I did that, I didn't know.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had like so much pride, like the railings. I took more pride in, I used to, cap off that, PT railing with a 2x6. And then at the end of the stair, I'd cut a half moon in it. And I'd take the router and route. Dude, I did all this bullshit, but I couldn't make the treads the horizons the right height. Like, I look back at it now and I'm like, you made all that other stuff great. Like, no one's going to get a splinter. Phenomenal, but someone's gonna break their face every time they come up that stair.
Grandmom.
Seriously. But I just didn't know.
Right.
So I think the hardest thing is the people that do know that are doing it.
Right.
And you see them and you're like, there's like, I don't know if they were half the price of you, but
pretty close.
I got to tell you that there's so many times now where I'm like, hey, yeah, I didn't get that build. And I'm not bitter about it. But like lately I've driven around. Like someone's like, hey, I want to do this job in 3 months, blah, blah. And I'm like, I would love the promise. It sounds like a great opportunity. There's no way. And then you hear like through somebody else, oh, they just finished it and it's been 14 months. And I was like, dude, knew it. And those are the things that almost energize you and power you up like a Care Bear. It's like, yes, like that's unbelievable. It's like I drove by another job and it's like they haven't even started yet. And they want like, we have to start in a month. And I was like, not happening. And they're like, oh, well, this guy says we can. And there's a job right down the street from me on the same street as us. And I was like, this is perfect. Down the street, we can manage this. And they're like, no, we're going to go with this guy. He's a big shot in the area. I'm like, okay, see if he gets through permitting in time. Just permitting alone won't let you start this project in the time frame you're saying. You can't cut.
Right.
But it's still sitting there.
And those people are landing that job because they're telling them that they can.
They're promising it. And again, you could do that and go, I could have said the same thing. Is that, yeah, we'll do that. And then I'll have to have that comment. But that whole trust thing is now, it's like that high school relationship. It's like as soon as she thinks you're cheating, dude, you're going to have to fight so hard to get that back. And dude, I'm done fighting for that. I'd rather just keep the mojo. I think one of the things we talked about earlier was repeat business.
Right.
I read an article forever ago, Tyler. It may have been JLC or Fine Home Building. It's probably like the Builder magazine, that like only 10% of our industry gets repeat business. So I used to like say to myself, dude, I'm in the top 10%. This is how I read it. I'm in the top 10% of my business, like the whole industry, because we do a basement, then we get like the attic, we'd get the kitchen or whatever it was. And it's
just because you're cheap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's later on what I realized. But then I started working for other companies and they weren't cheap and they were getting, I find that some of these clients, again, you guys said the small projects, like Tyler, you'll do some of these small things. I've also known that these small products grow into big projects.
Right.
And sometimes some savvy clients will tell you, hey, we want to do this part of this project to see how it goes. So that way they can open up the next level and go, we're going to give you the whole inside. Yeah. Because now we know they may not say it in those terms, but it's really what's happening is that, think about it. When this is people's life savings and their biggest investment. Right. For them, some people will go and bid it 4 ways. That's not the right way. But other people will go, hey, let me try this out. Let me try a mudroom edition and see how this goes. And if it's awesome, let's keep going.
Right.
So, I mean, you got to understand people.
One of my best customers, it started 2 years ago with replacing her front door. And while we were there replacing the door, she was all happy, like, oh my God, it looks so great. And she's like, hey, I think one of my windows is rotted. She had these old wood windows. And I'm like, all right, let's go check it out. So I go in and I'm like, yeah, sure. Like the frame, she was getting water and the frame was rotted. And I'm like, man, if this window's rotted, like we should probably look at all the windows in the house. And we went around and every single one of them, same detail, same rot, they were junk. The windows were just old and they needed to be replaced. And she's like, well, let's replace them all. I mean, that was a huge job for me. Huge Marvin job, big windows. And then she's like, well, while you're replacing those, why don't we do all new exterior and interior trim on all of my windows and all the doors? I'm like, okay, and then after that, she's like, and next spring, I want you to build me a new deck. And it was like this monstrosity with glass railings. I mean, and she's the only customer, because she's a repeat and she's awesome, that I'll do T&M. Like we were just there last week and she's like, I have a punch list for you to do. It's a few days. And it was, and she's great. And I'm like, okay, I treat her right. But yeah, it's just like you said, I went to install a door, a 1 day, 2 day job. And then I got this like monster renovation out of it. And it was just like, dude.
But that's how it all starts. I was doing, when I was younger, I would do that on the side. Not taking anything away from that, but I'll be like, oh, you need 2 front doors? And I would take all weekend to do those doors. But then someone else would see me there and all that. When you're doing the side hustle, you're working for somebody else and you're doing weekends. And I was more gaining experience. That's what I use my weekend work for. Looking back at the time, I was just like, I have nothing else to do. I'm just going to keep working. But I look back and it's like, no, I would do these doors. I would do, basement remodel. I'd do roofing. And it was like, that was my way into the industry, was to keep learning, keep going. But I used to love that. And then people would be like, hey, oh, you did that. Can you do this deck for me? And I'll be like, I'll price it out. I think the hardest thing to learn is that it's almost infectious. Like if she's saying, I want to do this, you're almost immediately going to go, yes. And then you're like, but I promised the next month to so-and-so in their deck. And now you're compromising that new relationship for this one relationship.
Right.
And it's really weird. Like I had a conversation with a client, a huge project, architect, designer, everyone. They're like, hey, we're on a call and they're like, can you put a budget to this? And I said, yeah, I'll start working on that. Yeah, I'll start punching numbers. I got off that call and I'm like, how? what are you talking about? There's no detail. And I'm like, I don't know what the flooring is, the trim. My mind started racing and I'm like, why didn't you answer that way? Why didn't you just go, it's too early, guys, to really put a number to this. It's really going to do square foots for the time being until more details come down the line.
Right.
That should have been my slick answer. That should have been my IG answer.
Yeah,
that I've had 12 hours to think about and come up with a savvy answer. But at the time I was like, the people pleaser in me was like, yeah, I'll jump on that, guys. And then when I got off that and read over my notes, I was like, how are you going to do that? That's just like fake. I'll be putting numbers to fictitious details that don't exist. Cause they're like, we want all 18 French doors to be steel. I'm like, all right, that could be a range of, I don't know what, like one item out of my whole spreadsheet. Like it just,
right.
And that was last Thursday and it's still haunting me today, just so you guys know who I am. Like that was an hour call. It's still haunting me.
That pocket door the pocket stack slider that you just did, that was bad. That thing's sick.
And I do videos from like drones and everything else. Throw it up, gets 250,000 views.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I called Marvin. I was like, did you guys promote this on the back end? And they're like, what? How does it stack up against your other videos? I'm like, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's like,
or to say don't.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know how this happened.
The algorithms, man, I can't figure those things out. They're crazy.
I never even try. It's like Spanish to me.
Yeah, it just happens. You just post something and it goes viral.
I learn a few words. I learn hola, ¿cómo estás?
Yeah.
That's it. So I learn how to post, edit. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. I like that you said that though, the IG expression, because everything's perfect on Instagram.
Well, I think I learned that when I hang out with Tyler and Nick, and it's like we go and do a talk at like a JLC or whatever, and I'm like, I evaluate myself, and I'm like, wow, man, I sound way more savvy on an IG post when I'm stopping at a red light and I'm writing it and then I'm editing it and then I don't know the word, so I'm substituting that word and I'm looking up, a synonym for that word and I'm trying to do this and yeah, it sounds dialed in. And then I get asked. I remember a couple of years ago, I think it was Justin Fink asked me. He goes, "So what's it like being in business?" And I answered that all wrong, and I was so mad. I was on a panel with these guys at JLC, and I answered that. I was like, I remember there was like, I had subcontractors in the stands and I had like a client in the stands, and I answered it like a jackass. And that made me then do a video to really answer that question the way I should have answered it. And so, yeah, it's a nightmare. It's like, I didn't want to say that because you're like, I don't want them to feel like the project's a nightmare. In my head, to be completely honest, when I'm talking to other builders and other subcontractors or GCs wanting to be whatever, builders and subs wanting to be GCs, I wanted to speak the truth, but there were too many people that were influencing my answer at that situation, and it bummed me out. So like, I overthink way too much stuff after the fact, and it made me hire Puff and do a video of it's on I think it's on my webpage. It's like, hey, what's it like to be in business? It's like, oh, this is reality. It's a nightmare. And I try and hold it together and use every bit of experience. There's no way I could build the product that I'm building today, like probably 10 years ago. 10 years ago, me couldn't touch. If these phone calls came, I wouldn't be able to do them, or I wouldn't be able to do them without realizing the team I needed, like architects. Like now when people call me, it's like, who is your landscape architect? Dude, 5 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, I'll take a stab at that. I'll make it look pretty. I'll steal some ideas from another architect that a client had paid for to have on the job. And I'll kind of repurpose those thoughts and ideas if it vibes with you. But without that experience, like there's no way. Even if the economy was amazing, I could never have, it would have taken 10 years to gain this experience. I couldn't fast forward.
So what do you use Instagram for from a business perspective, Garrett?
I mean, I try to.
Do you not?
I do. I mean, I use it for both. It's my personal.
He's
I
a
mean,
model. He's a model, dude. Have you seen his IG? He's a model.
He's a model.
So I kind of, when I started Instagram, I've been on Instagram for a while, but I never posted work until I kind of started realizing people were doing that. That was 6 years ago or whatever.
It was all Speedo shots before that.
No, it was just like, I was drinking then. So it was like, go out to the bar with friends, taking a photo. Like, I didn't post any carpentry work. And I don't know, it wasn't really a thing then. So what was it, like 2011, 12? Whenever I went into business for myself, I started following Joe Canning, Canadian carpenter.
Yeah.
I started following Tyler. I started following you. You guys are like OGs. Started following you guys. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. You guys were doing stories. So I got kind of hyped on that, and that's just I started doing stories. I started posting my work. And really, to be honest, I get work off of Instagram, not a ton, but I do get work off Instagram. And I like to just keep it real, talk about my sobriety. My whole Instagram feed is my life. It's the Life of Bub. That's the name. There's a reason for it. It's my work. It's my family. It's my sobriety. I really try to just stay true to who I really am. I don't want to be fake. I kind of try to tell it how it is. Talk about my troubles with life. Talk about my demons. I'm not perfect, and some people, I get messages, and I appreciate messages. I get a lot. I'm sure you guys do too. You get messages from guys, and like, oh, I look up to you. You're killing it. Like. And yeah, I post all the good stuff on Instagram, but I also post some bad things. I posted a mistake recently on a frame on a garage, and I kind of went on a rant saying, like, this isn't talked about. And a lot of people were kind of hurt about, like, well, it shouldn't be talked about because, pretty much like, this is Instagram and that doesn't happen. And I'm like, but it does. And my whole point of the post was, I found a mistake on a frame and I made it right. And that's being real. That's being true. We all fuck up. Johnny just said it. Some days are a nightmare in this business. But that's what I use Instagram for, is just to show people like what I'm doing and what I'm about. And it does work.
There's accountability there too, as well, where
Right.
I know for myself, if I'm going to preach a certain standard of work and the way that I approach a job, and I then send a potential customer or an architect or a designer to look at my Instagram to get a general sense of how we work, and then I show up to the job and I don't hit that level, then I'm not being accountable for my actions.
Right.
I'm putting out something that I'm actually not doing. I'm talking the talk and I'm not walking the walk.
Right.
For me, the to be able to put yourself out there and hold yourself accountable to that standard, and then get on a podcast or meet with the customer or spend 6 months in somebody's home and post their job while you're doing it live, and them see that and appreciate that and not like have an issue with you. Well, yeah, you posted this close up of over here, but the rest of the job looks like crap,
Right.
Like, so I want to be able to post that and be proud of what we're doing and show the customers things that they may not realize, and hold myself accountable to a standard that maybe some people don't realize, maybe some of my customers don't see. And for me, that's really important, because I have to look at myself in the mirror, and a lot of times the customers don't get what goes into it. And I don't want to just put off, even the last conversation we had where he's like, well, you could sell yourself this way and then get this much more. Preach that like, I just want to sell myself the way that I'm doing it, and
Right.
then everything else will come around. And if I need to make more money, then I figure out how to make more money. But I don't want to basically conjure up this image of what I'm doing. Like, I want to cultivate all of these images and articulate what I'm doing in one organized manner, and be accountable for that, for this customer, for the next customer, for every potential customer that comes forward.
Yeah, I agree.
Which
it's good.
From like a business standpoint, I don't owe that to anyone. That's just something that I want to do for myself. And I think, even Garrett, like posting mistakes, there's a fine line there where you don't want your customers to think, well, there's so many mistakes and this and that. But you have an opportunity to show a mistake and how you did right by that mistake, or how you dealt with that issue, that somebody can come up to that, experience a situation or a circumstance that's similar to that, and then how they could come out of that okay and not have to redo everything, or how they can problem solve that. But at the same time, potential customers don't want to see every day that you dealt with 6 mistakes and you fixed every one of them, because then they're like, dude, all this guy does is fix mistakes all day long. Like, he's good on his second time around.
Yeah.
I think it's tough because you don't want to celebrate it. I mean,
No.
you can, when it happens, you can be honest with yourself in the project. It just, I forget, someone hit me up a while ago and they were like, I'd love you to break that down. And I'm like, I'm not breaking that down. I'm on, like, when I'm on a job, I'm punched into that job, meaning they're paying for me to be on that job. And this is one of the biggest things that changed from when I was with my last company, where we did a lot of spec, but we curated it into be custom. I had I've thought about this a lot. Ben and I were like, why, we don't have, no one questioned how much we had for work with our own boss, because a lot of it was spec and they didn't have a choice. Our boss would buy another property and go, hey, you're starting this on Tuesday. I'm like, all right, shit, I'm posting on it, blah, blah. Now it's like, you post in the beginning, we post on a lot of our jobs to show that we're successful and we're, hitting the ground running. And then 2 years in, clients are like, yeah, you got too much work. You probably can't have, you don't have time for us. And then it was like, whoa, hold on a second. I need to reevaluate this. And then there's times where you're punched on a job and someone says, hey, I'd love to see you explain that better. It's like, yeah, I'm not doing it on the client's time. And I don't have time between the jobs I have running and the guys that I'm trying to educate and teach in our crew, and then have time for my family. Guess what's going to go is IG. There's I would love to be on it more. I really would. And there's days where I have bursts of time and I crush a bunch of posts. And then there's times where I'm not on for a month. And that's just the reality of it. And, it happens where you meet a client and they're like, hey, we love your IG. And then Ben and I turn to each other and go, got to get on IG more. And then we do this thing every time. And then we post a couple and then we're like, oh, it's just reality. It's because, the priority is not to promote ourselves. And the beauty of, I think of, Nick's page, Tyler's page, and you guys, it's like there's an educational line that you're hitting every time, where someone is at the same point as you in this industry, and they're going to have a takeaway that day. That's key.
Right.
Yeah, I think that your goal for all of that, just like business and life, should be to use it to improve yourself, to improve your company, to improve the industry, to improve the standard, obviously to learn from it and everything else, to grow from it. But if you're not pulling that type of value out of it, then it can just be a time suck. If it's just to get on there and it's creating headache for you, then it doesn't really make that much sense. I think that it's much easier to get on there and spend time and not prove yourself and just be authentic. And it, like you said, it's my life. I want to convey what I'm doing and kind of portray my life, so you can get a glimpse into the day-to-day operations of business and what goes into this. And that's going to be the good, that's going to be the bad, it's going to be the ups and downs, the struggles, the successes, and all of that. And I think that you need a blend of that. If somebody wants to see into your life, you need to give them all of that. You can't just give them one side or the other, or else it's not going to be authentic, and it's going to come off as a gimmick.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was there's definitely, the haters. I was getting really sick of the haters on Graham, and I just block them now. I don't have time for the negativity. I was letting it like how dare they? And it's like, when it comes down to it, it's like, it's some dude or girl, I don't even know them, They have nothing to do with my life. If that's what they want to think, because that's what they think, that's fine. I'm just going to not react to it and not feed into it and get rid of it and move on. And that's been a huge thing for me, because, there's going to be negativity wherever you go. It's just how you control it. And you can totally control it on Instagram. You can just not pay attention to it and get rid of it.
Yeah, especially if it is your life and it is something that you care about and that you're really putting yourself out there and you're putting your best foot forward and you're spending the time to do your best, and then somebody comes on and tells you it could be better this way, or you could do that, or this
Right.
is ugly, or even a customer's decision where, like, yeah, I don't really like that paint color, but at the end of the day, if that's what makes that customer happy, cool. Why is it on you to sit there and say that's an ugly paint color?
Right.
Like, there's just no need for that.
Not to mention, like you said, I mean, a lot of my customers follow me. So it's like I post something on their job and then there's negativity coming in and they're like, it makes them think, and that's like,
exactly.
That's unnecessary. I had a guy, I did a post on my 34th birthday, just like kind of dove into sobriety a little bit, where I was when I was 30 and where I am now. And some dude commented, he said, save this shit for the Hallmark channel. And I was just like, like, what the fuck, dude? You go on his page, he has like no pictures, like 3 followers, and you're just like, fuck you, like, get out of here.
Yeah, dude. There's been so many times where like we've posted stuff and someone said something super negative or has been combative, and then you DM them. I remember it was years ago. I posted a picture on a garage we were framing, and in each side was a gable end. So the framers had like 2 gables down, and someone actually Fine Home Building reposted it back in the day, and everyone lit up on that page and was like, no railings, blah blah, no safety. And it's like, dude, I don't know how fast you frame, but if you're gonna stand 2 gables up, you're not putting temp walls up while you lay down 2 more gables. You're a clown. But like, I went in and I DM'd each one of them directly and was like, hey, I totally understand where you're coming from. This is why we did this. And they're like, dude, love you, blah, blah. And it's like, but then you're like, dude, whatever point you were trying to get across with that negativity is totally gone because you're a troll.
Right.
Like, it's like yelling at someone on a job site. Right. That never sinks into anyone, or yelling at your kids. They're just like, dude, you're psycho.
I don't hear anything that you're saying right now. You just look like a madman.
It's like yelling at a dog. They don't understand you, bro.
They're like,
yeah, they're just, it's the same difference. Whether it's a subcontractor, your kids, a dog, you start yelling like bloody murder, it's over. Like, everyone's just disconnected and go, and you've gone down a few notches in whatever, hierarchy there is, in my opinion. Right. So it's like, how do you do it in a skillful, classful way? But I mean, this is really where adults, and for a long time, you couldn't get this kind of feedback,
right? Good
or bad. Like, I think there's some days where you're having a really shitty day and you post something, it gets a lot of great feedback. That can carry you for a full week, that you're like, all right, I needed that little dopamine hit. And it took me through a point where I was struggling.
Right.
And there's good moments in that, but yeah, I've had troll accounts make fun of every ounce of everything I'm about. Like, they've gone through my website and, they've killed it. I mean, honestly, but it makes you rethink it. Like, we blocked it and all that stuff. But I remember there was one site that I was like, oh yeah, maybe I say that too much. Maybe I try and drill that point home too much. And I do. I mean, I don't want it to happen, but I did appreciate it.
Right. No, for sure. Are you on TikTok at all?
I was for a minute.
Dude, the trolls on TikTok are hilarious. You can't post anything on TikTok without getting trolled. It's hilarious.
No TikTok for me. I've heard about it. Sounds kind of neat.
It's different.
I'm going to steer clear. I feel like I waste enough time doing dumb crap.
Right. Yeah.
I don't need to be on TikTok.
If I'm putting time into anything, it's going to be YouTube.
Yeah, I've thought about that.
I'm trying. We have a production company we're working with to try and document our builds. Like those brownstones we have, they're just Some of them are unbelievable. Like people really say you see maybe 10%. You probably see 1% of what we build.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. And I walk them with Benny. Like we had beers in the city the other day, and it's like we have a brownstone that looks out to the common of Boston. And then we're underpinning that entire building because it's all the telephone poles are rotted. That's what holds up the piles of the building. And it's like we have to cut out 28 inches of the entire basement and then underpin it with concrete. And it's like, dude, who does this? And we have 3 of them on the hill, and they're all unbelievable. And it's but it's like, who else is going to see that? I think that's what I say to most people is like when you say you don't have time, it's like what you do, and whether you think it's special or not, it shouldn't be between the subs on the site, the client, and you. Like you could with this industry, and we always talk about the skills trade gap and keep craft alive. The simplest thing you can do is spread your knowledge. And you don't need to be the best photographer. None of us were. I remember when I used to use filters on IG. It was like, I'm going to use this frame and do this filter. And it was like, you look back and it's like, it's brutal. But it was like, hey, you evolve like anything else. Like the deck you built 10 years ago, you might do 2 of the same things that you do today. And so it's the same difference. It's got to evolve. But if you can pass it down and tell that story, I think stories have done a good job of telling the real life of what's happening because it evaporates. It's gone in 24 hours. But, pictures can last a little longer. And then, getting those events, going to JLC and letting people know you're there and meeting people one-on-one and telling that story that you're real. Like we joked about, like, it's amazing that Instagram and social media came along. And one of the huge benefits was like being able to meet some of my idols, like Tommy Silver and Norm and those guys. Those guys were actually, you can meet them now. Before that didn't happen, Now they walk IBS and you're like, dude, he's on the floor. Like it's the coolest thing. They're like superheroes. But I think that's what's cool is that you can connect with people that normally you look at from afar. But dude, I could DM you tomorrow and go, hey, I'm dealing with this situation. How do you do with it? That's probably 90% of the questions I get. Isn't like, hey, I love you. It's more of like, hey, what do I do here?
All right, guys and girls, thank you for tuning in for another podcast episode with the Modern Craftsman. If you guys haven't hopped onto iTunes and give us a review, hopefully a positive review. We're going to read the positive reviews online, and people who are giving us negative reviews, we're not going to give you the gratification of reading that online. But we do have a Survey Monkey that you can go on and give us some constructive criticism, how to shape the podcast. John, where do we find the Survey Monkey?
It is in the link on IG, on the Modern Craftsman on IG.
Yeah, so also thank you everyone for all the feedback on last week's episode. We had a lot of people give input and say that it wasn't such a bad thing that we moved ahead and produced that episode and put it out. So we do appreciate the insight and giving us some feedback there.
We do have a new review.
Oh, we do?
This is kind of hilarious. MCP Fame, 5-star. It was done on Thursday. This past weekend at Whole Foods, I saw a woman rocking an MC podcast t-shirt. So I had to mention that I was also a listener. She told me she was John's wife and that I was the first person to ever mention something to her. Happy to claim that first. I'm also about to purchase my first home, my grandmother's house, that needs some desperate renovation updating. I plan to learn a lot through the process and see where it takes me. I'll be looking and listening to you guys for inspiration. Keep it up, Greg. Thanks, Greg.
That's amazing.
It was pretty funny.
That's crazy because I was up, I think I was at Whole Foods in Jamaica Plain one time, and I'd gotten tattooed, and after I got tattooed, I was up, I don't know, I was seeing Nick or something. And I went over there and I got a coffee until Rachel was going to come pick me up. I think she was at the zoo or something. She took the girls somewhere, and I was sitting there and somebody came up to me in Whole Foods and was like, hey, I follow your Instagram. It must be something with Whole Foods up there. We just have like a decent following for Whole Foods. Whole Foods contractors go there. Did your wife tell you about that?
Yeah, she did. She's like, I ran into this guy, blah, blah.
Told him to leave a review.
Yeah, she didn't though. It was funny. It's just a small world. He actually DM'd me and he's like, "Hey, bumped into your wife." I'm like, "Dude, thanks for it." He's not even in the business. He's
That's
just
cool.
Yeah. It's always fun to hear. I was at hockey the other day, men's league, on a Thursday night, and played. They were drinking beers in the parking lot, and this we're in like a circle, and then someone kind of sneaks up close to me, like everyone has like 2 feet, 3 feet away.
Yeah.
I'm not in this conversation. Someone's like next to me on the right. I was like, "Yeah." Look over, the guy goes, You're Johnny?" And I'm like, "I am, yeah." And I was actually wearing one of your shirts.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I listened to the podcast." I'm like, "Oh, the shirt gave it away." And he's like, "No, I was just sitting there listening and drinking beers, and I recognized the voice." He's like, "I'm not in the business, but I listen." It's
That's
always
cool.
weird when it happens. I'm like, "Cool, man. Thanks for listening."
Yeah, I had a couple. I'm working down in Ocean City, which is not my typical area, and I've had a couple people stop. At one point, there were 2 girls who were walking by. I guess her husband's a contractor, and I saw them kind of point, and I'm like, "What are these like chicks pointing at right now?" And then they walk by again, and I was like going in or coming out from doing something, and they're like, "Is this you?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's my truck." And then they're like, "Oh, my husband's in the industry. We listen to the podcast. I'm going to get my husband on," which is just, I don't know. It's still crazy to see. I feel like I get very awkward when people approach me like that and very uncomfortable. And they're probably like, "Man, what a weirdo."
Right? Yeah, he's a dick.
What an asshole. I'm just like, "All right, see you later. I'm going back into work."
I think Nick nails it out of the park, though.
Yeah, because Nick loves it.
He's dynamite with it. He's
Yeah,
on
he
he's on
loves that.
vacation this week.
I know.
Missed him.
Jealous. Could use a vacation. I took like 3-4 days off. I kind of worked some, but I'm like, didn't even feel like I had much time off. I need like something substantial. Oh well. All right. As always, that's what Nick says. This podcast is brought to you by Duration Molding and Millwork. Considering a build with premium beveled siding? If so, make sure to have a look at Duration brand beveled siding. It's made out of polyash, a waste byproduct from coal production. I always tell people that that it's basically it's the closest thing I could compare it to is charcoal, which
Yep.
I don't know if that's the proper analogy when you're trying to upsell somebody or just tell them, "Hey, I have a really nice product that you can use." It's basically charcoal and you're going to put it on your house. But I do tell people that. Unlike premium wood products like cedar, Duration siding comes in 16-foot lengths without finger joints, won't rot, cup, or check, have no clearance restrictions, don't need to have end cut sealed or primed, and it's much more fire resistant. Most importantly, the material is indistinguishable from real wood once it's painted, and you'll save a lot in labor in terms of the install and finish. To learn more about Duration Polyash products, please visit their website at durationmillwork.com and be sure to follow them on Instagram.